Hi and welcome back to my channel. In this video, you have my March wrap-up. I have a lot of books to talk about. Not as many as I thought that I might get to, but I still have a lot to talk about. That being said, I don't go into synopses or anything like that. I just talk about some statistics, some goals that reading those books met, and also I rank them. So let's start off by talking about statistics. Overall, this month, I read 41 books. You heard that right. I read 41 books. I will say that a lot of them were middle grade and several of them were also graphic novels for Peace Talks. I'll get to that in a moment. That's approximately 14,000 pages. It's also approximately 85 hours listened to. Now, that statistic is a little bit nebulous. It's probably in that range because I can't go by the hours listed on the audiobook because I listen faster than 1 times speed, and I just estimate how long it took me to finish the book. As far as a change to my owned TBR, the vast majority of the books that I have over here were from my owned TBR. I do have a stack, about 4 or 5 of them from the library, and I also read a few via ebook. So, not that many actually. I added 21 books to my TBR, and that included my tax return haul, which is coming out in a video after this one goes up, if I remember correctly. But I subtracted 26 books from my owned TBR, which is a net of 5. That's not too shabby. This, by the way, is the paper that I'm using with all my stats written on it. Now, my most read genre, it should not surprise anyone, but my most read genre is fantasy. Apparently I have a whole lot of fantasy books with red covers or people on the cover. Contemporary came next with 6, and I also had a surprisingly large number of sci-fi. I think some of that came from some of the arcs that I was finishing and also the series that I decided to start. As far as how I read them, as is my trend, more and more, so I can do other things like crochet with my genre blanket or work on a cross-stitch project, the vast majority of the books I read via audiobook. That is 24 of them. 24 of the 41, so a little over half. 14 of them I read completely physically. 2 I read as a mixture. 1 was because the audiobook went back before I was finished, and the other one was because I really wasn't vibing with it in physical form, and it just felt like it was taking longer, so I switched to the audiobook. I also read 1 via ebook. As far as the series started, I started 12 series. Now, that does include 1 series that I started and finished within the same month. And I think those were library books that I have accidentally already sent back. I forgot I read those this month. Then I continued in 6 series, and I finished 3 series. That includes that one that I started and finished. It was duology. And I DNF'd 1. I don't remember which one that was. As far as the categories go, the largest category I had by far was middle grade. In middle grade, I read 22 books. 22 middle grade books. 9 young adult and 9 adult. Those numbers might be slightly off because there were 2 books that I was in the middle of on the 31st when I gathered all of this data. Because in my mind, that does not quite add up to 41. But if I were to factor that in, I think the one that I finished on the very last day was a memoir, so that would go in adult. The publication year for most of this is still 2023. I'm working through a lot of those arcs. A lot of the arcs that I have are from 2023. And a lot of the books that I have on my shelves that I got in book boxes and things like those are also from 2023. Now let's get into which books I read fit for various goals. First off, the series that I chose to start in March is the Murderbot series. This was definitely a success and one of my sci-fi books. I continued in 2 of the books from my series list that started prior to BookTube. I read 2 of the Sisters Grimm books because red was the color for my team. So I had to read this one first, so I read books 4 and 5. And I also read book 2 in the Renegade series. So I continued with both of them to get myself closer to clearing that list. As far as 24 and 24 goes, the 2 that I read for that were Promise Boys and Magpie Murders. This was a definite success. This was the one that I just didn't gel with. When it comes to nonfiction, I thought that I might not make it, but then at the end of the month, I tried to prioritize it. And one of my book of the month books that I got this month, this is a phenomenal book, but obviously it's all red and has people on the cover. I read this one. This is a memoir. I also read Poverty by America. It's very short, very impactful. And I also read Legacy by Uche Blackstock, another memoir. So I managed to read 3 nonfiction books this month. I'm hoping to bump that number up significantly. As far as my Rick Riordan project goes, I have 5 of the books here physically. I also read the Sal and Gabby duology, so that's a total of 7 books from the Rick Riordan Presents imprint line that I read this month. Hence why in April, I'm probably not going to be reading any Rick Riordan Presents imprints books unless I get to one of the arcs that I still have for the books that haven't come out yet. Speaking of arcs, aside from Legacy, which was an arc that I read as an ebook, I have 4 of these arcs here physically. 2 of them are library books, but I will be purchasing a copy of Like a Charm, and 2 are ones that I own physically. I will not be holding on to Treasured Gold, but I definitely will be holding on to The Tainted Cup. The rest of the books, I have 2 other stacks. I have a stack of my graphic novels. Now, when I originally, and I just realized one of the bits of data that I put down here was not the rating. So I don't remember what my overall rating for this month is. I should probably go look at that. When I sort these books by rating, I will come back and I'll tell you what my overall rating for the month was. I don't think it's gonna be very high because I read a lot of 3.5, 4-star books. So I think it'll be pretty much in the middle. But originally when I entered it into my spreadsheet, I put all of these as unrated. But when I was going to put them into Storygraph and Goodreads, I ended up choosing ratings for them. So I will include them in my categorization by rating. But I read 7 graphic novels. I had a whole bunch more that I could have read. Before I get to the other significant chunk of reading that I had this month, I just remembered that I read this book for Buzzwordathon, and that was Character Name in the title. I knew there was another list thing that I was forgetting about. But then the rest of the books that I read this month, you will sense a theme. These are all red books, as in R-E-D, not R-E-A-D. So in just a moment, I will come back and I will give my overall average rating, and then I will talk about the books in each of those categories from least liked up until most liked. Okay, so my overall average was a 4.1. And while going through all of the ratings and sorting through all of the books, I discovered that there were a couple arcs that I had forgotten about. One of them I now own physically because I purchased it as part of that book haul. So that one is The Space Between Here and Now. All right, so without any further ado, let's get into all of the books by rating that I read in the month of March. I'm going to start with the lowest, which was a DNF. And that is The Elephant in the Room by Holly Goldberg Sloan. Then I'm going to mention a book that I don't rate, and that is, well, 2 books actually, and those are memoirs. I have physically Hereafter by Amy Lynn and Legacy by Uche Blackstock. Then I did have 1 2.5 stars, and that was one of my ARC copies, and that was Kenyon Masters and the Peerless Magic Crew. That was just very disappointing, and it was a 2.5 star. My 3-star books, we have Kay is in Trouble by Gary Clement and Magpie Murders by Anthony Horowitz. Next, we have my 3.5-star reads. Now, any of these books, unless they are graphic novels, if they are below a 4 stars, they are not staying in my collection. The graphic novels, however, I am going to be bringing with me to help stock up my classroom library collection, simply because graphic novels are something that kids will be drawn to, and if we want to help them build that reading habit, I want to have plenty of options and variety for them to choose from. So my 3.5-star reads are Treasure Island Runaway Gold by Jewel Parker Rhodes, Hidden Truths by Ellie Swartz, The Bach Ness Monster by Sarah Getter and Natalie Reese, Shelley Frankenstein Cow Piggy by Colleen Madden, and Atana and the Firebird by Vivian Zhao. Now we get into my very large stack of 4-star reads. We start with the Sal and Gabby Duology, Sal and Gabby Break the Universe, Sal and Gabby Fix the Universe by Carlos Hernandez. Then we have Pages & Co., The Book Wanderers, Book 1 by Anna James. We have Book 2 in the Renegades series, Arch Enemies by Marissa Meyer. We have Book 1 in the Kingdom series by Bethany Jacobs, These Burning Stars. We have Book 4 of the Sisters Grimm series, Once Upon a Crime by Michael Buckley. Descendant of the Crane by Joan He. The Scarlet Alchemist by Kylie Lee Baker. Book 2 in the Sura Boateng series, Sura Boateng's Guide to Witchcraft and Mayhem by Roseanne A. Brown. Book 1 in the Paua Moa series, Paua and the Soul Stealer by Lori M. Lee. Book 1 in the Janie's series, My Lady Jane by Cynthia Hand, Brody Ashton, and Jody Meadows. Book 5 in the Sisters Grimm series, Magic and Other Misdemeanors by Michael Buckley. The conclusion to the Shadow Bruja duology, Dawn of the Jaguar by J.C. Cervantes. Book 2 in the Emily Wilde series, Emily Wilde's Map of the Otherland by Heather Fawcett. Things in the Basement by Ben Hackey. And the conclusion to the Thousand Worlds trilogy, Foxnare by Yoon-Ha Lee. My stack over here is quite precarious. I'm going to make a new stack. Next we have my 4.5 star reads. Not too shabby of a pile. We have The Jinn Waits 100 Years by Shubnum Khan. Next we have another arc, Adia Kelbara and the Circle of Shamans by E.C. Hendricks. We have book 1 in a series I don't remember the name of, that is Like a Charm by Elle McNichol. I actually just got an arc of book 2, so can't wait to read that. We have book 2 in the Crown of Feathers series, Heart of Flames by Nikki Palpretto. We have book 1 in the Gardens of the Dawn series, Zara by S.J. Jones. We have Nimona by N.D. Stevenson. We have book 1 in the Murderbot series, All Systems Red by Martha Wells. We have Poverty by America by Matthew Desmond. And book 1 in a series that I don't remember the name of, The Tainted Cup by Robert Jackson Bennett. And as I was sorting these, I realized I had a lot of 5-star reads. A lot more. I probably doubled the number of 5-star reads that I've had all year. Is part of that due to the fact that I just read a sheer large number of books? Probably. But I also read some really, really good books. We have first The Space Between Here and Now by Sarah Suk. Promise Boys by Nick Brooks. A Burning by Megha Majumdar. Buzzing by Samuel Satin, illustrated by Rai Hickman. And The Spirit Glass by Roshni Chokshi. If we look at my 5-star reads, could you predict the kind of book that I will give 5 stars to? I'm not really sure that you could. Middle grade fantasy, middle grade contemporary graphic novel, hard-hitting literary fiction set in India, young adult thriller, young adult speculative fiction. Yeah, all of them are in different genres. 1 fantasy, 1 sci-fi, 1 straight old contemporary realistic fiction, 1 literary, and 1 thriller. They're all different genres. So, what does that say about my reading taste? I'm not quite sure. Maybe it means I'm broadening my reading taste, and I need to step out of my zone a little bit more. I was thinking about holding up all of these books. I'm not really sure that I can.